Welcome to podcast number 11 of Bass Talk with Hagen and Hayes. And today's topic is my favorite five. Good morning, Susan. How are you?
I'm good, David. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. And today I've chosen five of my favorite bass recordings. I thought we could talk about those.
Excellent.
And what did you think to the list? Did you enjoy listening to them?
I loved listening to them. What's interesting is that I really didn't know many of these recordings until you pointed them out to me. So it was really exciting for me.
Great. Well, the first one was the Grancina double bass of František Pošta. And František Pošta was my teacher. He was principal bass of the Czech Philharmonic for over 40 years and a really fantastic player, a complete musician. He used to sing on the bass, really, really fantastic. And about 40 years ago, I got a package of music from the Czech Music Information Center in Prague. They sent me this really nice package of bass music and this one recording, which was this Grancina double bass of František Pošta. And I think I was about 21 at the time, 22. And I'd already met Sarah, who's my wife now. And I put the record on. And within a minute, she said, he's the one to go and study with. And so I did. And fortunately, I met him the following year at the Isle of Man bass competition.
Mm-hmm.
That was 1982. And we met him there. And I think he was probably the oldest bass player there. And he gave the final recital of the week on a borrowed bass. And I think it was the best recital of the week. I have to say, it was absolutely phenomenal. And earlier in the week, we'd seen him. We were walking along the cliff top one day, and he was coming the other way, and he recognized us. And he said, "Oh, I've got a rehearsal at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Would you like to come and hear?" So
Mm.
yeah, we'd love to. So we went to this person's house. Imagine he's inviting you into somebody else's house. So it was really strange. So we knocked on the door. So we've come for a rehearsal, and he was in there rehearsing with his pianist, and it was in someone's lounge. So I was only 3, 4, 5 feet away from him, and I'd never heard playing like it. I'd never heard musicianship like it, just the quality, and it was unbelievable, and it really, really changed my life. And then it took me, I think, about 4 years to do anything about it because Czechoslovakia at the time was still under communist rule.
Sure.
So you had to get visas. We had to sign in with the police when we got there. It was quite difficult. But we went in 1986, and I had, I think, 26 hours of lessons in about 12 days. And
Wow.
when I was at Royal College of Music, I had 30 hours a year. So I'd had almost a year of tuition in 10 or 12 days. It was
That's
really
amazing.
amazing. And what did you like about it?
Well, the first thing I listened to this recording numerous times. And the first thing that I thought was, wow, that tone. I mean, I've heard you and Lynn Hannings and other people talking about Pasha and his tone, and it was. And I actually wrote down notes because I sometimes get airheaded and I like to see what I what I thought. And I wrote in all capital letters, so singing, and all these exclamation points, of course. Um, but the tone was, it's just maybe the most beautiful sound I've ever heard on the bass. And I can see why hearing him, even just on a recording, not having gotten to hear him in person, you would want to study with him. But then getting to hear that in the same room, and I mean, I can only imagine how phenomenal he was that you could hear him on a bass that was unfamiliar to him, and he still was just mind-blowingly incredible. But the sound that he produces is stunning. It's just glorious. But also he was so inherently musical. It never sounded forced or overdone. It was just this beautiful musicality. I thought, I want to sound like that. But in the recording, we'll let people hear a little bit of it. Like the first note kind of comes out of nowhere. Like you feel it, you sense it, and then its presence is a little more known. And it's not like he snuck in, like you know how sometimes you sneak in because you're a little uncertain. It wasn't that. It just blossomed from out of nowhere. And I was just awestruck by his sound.
Frank was he was a really fantastic musician, and it's something I always say to my students is, do you want to be a musician or do you want to be a bass player?
Mm,
A bass player plays the notes and a musician plays the music. And Frank was a musician first. He just so
yeah.
happened to play the bass. and he meant every note. He didn't throw one note away, and that was the interesting thing. And I still have music with his fingerings written in.
Mm,
So he's been dead 30 years, and the fingerings are still so fantastic.
yeah.
Some of them are maybe a little bit old-fashioned these days,
Yeah.
but I can still feel the. I know why he chose the fingerings he chose, because he would get the emotion and the quality by using the fingerings that he used. He was
Sure.
a tough teacher. He would only tell me things once, and if I
Mm.
didn't get it first time, he just moved on to something else. He was really. He,
That's tricky because sometimes it can take a couple shots at fixing something or changing something.
well, that was the old communist system. You just
Yeah.
once, and if you don't
Yeah.
get it, tough. That's your problem, not mine. So he was quite tough, but he was a great teacher, and he'd just pick up the bass, and it would just sound like Poshta. It didn't matter which bass it was, and
Yeah.
again, just to be so close to him was really fantastic. And when we were first in Prague in 1986, the very last night we were there, he had a recital in the center of Prague. He did half a recital, and we
Mm.
went to that. And it was just phenomenal to hear him play this Grancino double bass from
Yeah.
1693. Sometimes I had lessons on that bass,
Oh, wow.
and I used to play music by František Černý, which
Hmm.
Frank played, and the bass had been owned by Czerny. So I used to play Czerny's music on Czerny's bass,
That's really cool.
and I think it doesn't get much better than this, does it?
Right.
This is quite special. And the piece
Yeah.
I've chosen today was the Botticini's Elegy Number 3, which is
Yeah.
also called Romanza Patetica or Melody. I think Frank played a French edition of this piece, and it's just actually glorious. And in fact, this is the piece that I heard him rehearsing in the Isle of Man.
No kidding. Oh,
Mm.
wow. Perfect choice then.
Yeah. So this is
Yeah.
Botticini Elegy Number 3, Romanza Patetica. Which now brings me to my second recording. And the second one is Ludwig Streicher spielt Botticini. Ludwig Streicher plays Botticini. And this was the second record I bought. I only had one record in my collection. So I doubled my collection with him. It was so funny. I bought this record by George Hortnagel, German bass player playing Dittersdorf.
Ah.
That was the only record in the 1970s which was readily available. And I went down to London for a lesson, and I had a bit of time, so I just wandered down Gower Street near the British Museum, and there was a record shop there. So I went in there, and I said, "Do you have any bass records?" And they had this one record, Ludwig
Mhm.
Streicher spielt Botticini, and I had £2 on me, and this is $2, and this was like $1.80,
Oh, wow.
and I had 20 cents left, and I got about the journey back was I think 4 hours on the train, and I said I had probably 2 hours before, so I had about another 8 hours to go, and I had 20 cents to buy food and drink.
Oh, dear. Oh, no.
But it was the best thing I ever bought. And I remember I got on the train and there were no seats left, so I had to stand or sit in the corridor. And I read the back of this LP 4,000 times. And as soon as I got home, I haven't got time for food or drink. I had to go and put this record on. And this one record changed my life completely,
Mm.
because I'd seen all this Botticini music, but I'd never really heard anybody playing it. And there was this man who was human, not superhuman, playing it, and playing it really fantastically. And I thought, if he can do it, I can do it. All I need to know is how to do it. And that's what I didn't know at the time. And that was the difficulty of getting from A to B. But once I worked out how to do that, it was fine. And I think even now, I think it was recorded in the 70s, late 70s, it still stands up. I know the level of playing has improved, but I still think this is one of the best Botticini recordings.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. Um, Stryker was the hero of a few of my college friends.
Mhm.
And I remember not knowing who he was. Growing up in Boston, I was probably mildly obsessed with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. It was right here in my own backyard. And I didn't realize or know or understand that you could play solos and record them. You could have a
Mhm.
solo career. It was really not something that I understood. And I remember a lot of the hardcore BSO followers, the students were like, "Oh, you don't want to listen to Stryker. You need to listen to Chicago Symphony with Schulte playing the Beethoven symphonies, that sort of a thing." And I heard a recording, and it might have actually been this recording because it was a bunch of Bottesini, and I thought, wow, he's clean, clear tone, especially the high register.
Mhm.
Really, the harmonics are so fabulous, so singing. They sound effortless. And I even in this recording, I like the piano playing. I oftentimes don't even think about that. I'm
Mhm.
so obsessed with listening to the bass player. But in this recording, I even was like, wow, this pianist is sensitive and,
Mhm.
really good at supporting but staying out of the way. Um, but yeah, Stryker's playing is absolutely beautiful. And it brought me back to the very first time I actually heard this piece. Was Ben Levy, who's a bass player in the Boston Symphony,
Mhm.
had just gotten the BSO job and he was practicing backstage one day, and I didn't know the tarantella, and I was like, "What is this? This is clearly Bottesini because it sounds like it, but what is this piece?" And he showed it to me. I was like, "Oh my god!" But this recording of Strikers, it's fun. It's just
Mhm.
uplifting and joyful to listen to.
It is. I never heard him play live, but I did meet him. We
Hmm.
had dinner with him and his wife and daughter in Vienna. We went to their house,
Nice.
which was Sarah and I, which was really nice. So we spent 4 or 5 hours with them. It was really lovely. And his wife was telling me about his career as a solo bassist. And when he was in his 20s, I think he was in the Vienna Philharmonic, and he
Hmm.
decided he wanted to be a soloist. And all his colleagues made fun of him.
Hmm.
So he didn't bother. He decided not to. So I think he probably still played solos, but didn't pursue
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And I think in his 40s, he'd been asked to do a recital somewhere. And as he was rehearsing, his wife recorded it and sent it to an agent. And
Mm.
the agent liked it so much that then suddenly his career took off. And that's how it happened. And on the front of this record was a picture of Stryker with his bass, this fantastic Viennese bass.
Mm.
And I fell in love with the shape of that bass. And
Uh-huh.
I always wanted a Viennese bass. And it took me, I think it's about 20 years ago, I finally got a Viennese bass with
Oh,
that
that's so
fantastic shape.
cool.
Yeah, it took me a long time. And his bass was there. And I didn't play it, but I could see the bass. And it was amazing. And he told me about the story of how he got it I think during the Second World War, he got
Mm.
it. But he was really a phenomenal player and a phenomenal technician.
Yeah.
And I just love this Bottesini. And the Tarantella is a piece I've loved and I've played many times, and I just really enjoy this piece. So
It's a
this is
great piece.
Tarantella by Bottesini. Okay, my third one is Francois Rabath and Frank Proto. And again, I've met both of them. I met Francois. I went to his apartment. I was teaching in Paris, and I was there with Thierry Barbet, and we went to his apartment. He was showing me the new end pin for his bass,
Mm.
and we went to his favorite Chinese restaurant in Paris. And Francois, I first heard him in my first term at the Royal College of Music in London. So I was 20, and he came and did a masterclass, and he was doing a recital in London the next day, and he played some of his pieces, and I was just blown away. And the thing I discovered about Francois is he taught himself because he didn't have a teacher. So he'd found this this method book by Edward Nanny, and if he didn't understand it, he found a technique so that it would work. So he just broke all the rules without realizing his breaking of the rules, and then composed all this music. And Frank Proto, Frank I'd known of for forever, and we corresponded. And then I met him in Prague in 2016. Some nice photographs of Frank and I. And he very kindly wrote a piece my 60th birthday. And I wrote a piece dedicated to him, and I wrote a piece dedicated to his wife, Lisa. And this CD is Carmen Fantasy and two solo pieces by Frank, a Fantasy for bass and orchestra, and Concerto Number 2. And it's one of those recordings where it's just everything comes together. You have great soloist, great composer, great record, just everything great about it. And I was sent this when Double Bassist magazine first started. I helped set up the magazine, and I reviewed it, and I gave it a fantastic review. And in the next magazine, someone had written in to say, on the basis of my review, they bought a copy of the CD and they loved it as well. And I was so pleased by that. And what did you think to this?
Well, at first I saw the album cover and I thought, Roboth and Proto? I mean, really? That's two big heavy hitters on one CD. So Roboth playing Proto's music, it's amazing. And you know, when you listen to Roboth's playing on this CD, you can understand why he has so many followers. People that admire his playing, his musicality, his sound, all of it, and why they wanted to learn from him. When you hear someone that's just amazing and groundbreaking in many ways, you know, you can hear it. The sound, it's him. It's so him. And it's really great. And I remember I'd seen his technique books and I bought them and I was like, wow, this is like so different from anything I've ever done. And the solos that he writes are really like breaking the boundaries. But I was fascinated to hear him because I've heard him play so much of his music on, you know, YouTube and things. To hear him play Frank's music it's great. It's just beautiful. It's so lovely. I loved hearing this. And I love that the Carmen Fantasy. If I recall correctly, several Carmen Fantasies sort of came out all at the similar time. But the Proto one seems to have really stood the test of time. But this is a great CD. I feel like so far all of these CDs that you're talking about, people need to go out and get them. They need to
I think
hear
so.
them.
I think so.
Yeah.
But I first heard Francois, I say when I was about 20, and he'd done a masterclass and played. And then the next day he was playing the Wigmore Hall in London. And if I remember, I was the only bass player from the Royal College. Then nobody was interested. And I bought his book of solos, which I just found. It's the very first one that Frank did. And I think it was on a music typewriter in the olden days,
Oh,
before
yeah.
computer typesetting and everything. And I've still got that, and I saw it I bought it, I think October 1980. I think I'd gone to,
Oh.
I think September, October 1980, and then I'd bought his two LPs because they were available, which I've had for all these years, and
Mm-hmm.
I've loved his playing ever since. I love his solos, and I just love the fact that he didn't know he's breaking all the rules, and he's
Right.
made up new rules.
Yeah.
And the great thing about it is what I found in the bass world is anything which is good will survive, and
Right.
anything which is okay probably won't. And I think all this from Francois will survive. His new way of playing and just
Yeah.
new way of thinking, which I think is fantastic.
And I think it's great for people to remember you don't always have to do it the old way. If it's not
Mm.
working for you, find a way that works.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of a Carmen Fantasy by Frank Proto, played by Francois Rabath. And now we move to the great Gary Carr.
Mm.
Gary, I've probably known since I was about 17 or 18.
Uh-huh.
And he came to the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester, and we lived a couple of hours away. And my teacher knew him, he'd met him, and we went to a recital, and I was just blown away. So he was only in his 30s, I think, then. And
Mm.
it hasn't changed. He was, I think, Gary Carr from day one.
Yeah.
And he did a very serious first half, I think, your Baroque sonatas and whatever. And then the second half, Gary became Gary, and he was the entertainer. And it was astounding, absolutely astounding. And whenever I hear Gary play, I just come away thinking, wow, I can do that. I'm so full of enthusiasm, and just everything is possible. And
Well, he
it's
inspires you to.
completely,
Yeah.
completely. And the CD I've chosen is Gary playing the concerto by John Downey, American composer. And I have to say, it will never be on the top 10 list of favorite concertos. It's quite modern, and it's quite acerbic, and yeah. But I think it's a great piece. And I knew John. We were correspondent for a long time, and then I met him once in London. And in fact, it was Gary Carr's final recital in London. He was
Oh.
retiring, and I was there, and the hall was full. And so I got to meet John because Gary was playing the concerto, I think, a couple of days later with the London Symphony Orchestra, and they were doing a John Downey festival, which was nice. And he was such a lovely man, John. He was quite old by then. I don't think he was very well, but he was such a genuine and really lovely person. And you can't believe that he could write all this music, which is so completely opposite to how he was. It really was. It used the entire range of the bass. But again, this is a recording where you have great player, great composer, London Symphony Orchestra, Jeffrey Simon conductor, and just everything. To me, just everything comes together. And this is why Gary is so great, I think, with the recording like this.
Yeah, I think you're right. I didn't know John Downey's music, and I didn't know he'd written a bass concerto at all until you and I had been talking, and so I was excited to listen to this. And it's kind of atonal, but not ugly. There's nothing in it, I think, that's ugly. It's a nice piece. I like it. I think you're right. I think that, the Botticini will always be more famous and things like that. But it was a very cool piece. And I was excited because I've never heard of it. And so I felt like I learned a new piece. And I also feel like it did the piece a great service to have Gary playing it, because he can infuse his enthusiasm into anything. And like you said, he's so inspirational. You hear him play, and I remember as a kid, I'd be like, well, I might not ever be able to sound like that, but I want to try these pieces that I hear him playing. I think that it was the right call to have Gary record this piece, and he sounds lovely on it. It sounds like it's not easy to play, but it doesn't, when you listen to it, it doesn't give you this feeling of, oh, that's hard. You know what I mean? So I really enjoyed it, and I especially loved learning a new piece. I had heard the Tubin double bass concerto and the John Harbison double bass concerto when those were being sort of, premiered and things like that. But somehow I missed this one, and I'm excited to have heard it. It's great. I think everyone will enjoy taking a listen on it.
I think what I liked about this is the other side of Gary. This is a serious Gary.
Yes. This is the
Because
first half of the program.
Yeah, because a lot of the time we see the entertainer because he loves entertaining and sharing his enthusiasm. And this is a different way of sharing his enthusiasm. This is a way of also sharing his expertise and musicality, and just showing why he's world famous, and why he's one of the great players of the double bass. And I just love this one. And as I said, it will never be in the top 10 of favorite concertos, but I hope this one survives. I really think it should do. So this is part of the concerto by John Downey, performed by Gary Carr and the London Symphony Orchestra. my final CD is Bottesini, of course it is. And is there anybody else? And it's duets, the 3 grand duets, the 2 double basses,
Yeah.
which I think he wrote when he was a student. They're dedicated to his teacher in Milan, Luigi Rossi. And they were amazing. I bought 2 records of these by 2 Italian players, probably in the 1970s, which I think were still great recordings. But suddenly this one was recorded by Ovidio Badilla and Wolfgang Gutler. And Wolfgang, I never met, sadly. Really great player, really wonderful musician. Ovidio Badilla was a great friend of ours. And we spent many, many hours in his company. And I always say to my students, Ovidio is the real deal. He was not only the best player I've ever heard in my life, probably the best musician as well, and also the nicest person. He was really such a fantastic musician, fantastic bass player. And last time I saw him was in 2000. We were all working in Denmark together at the big bass convention. And he'd recorded these, I think maybe a year before. And I'd bought the CD just before I'd gone to Denmark. And he was telling me about it, and he was saying that they were both Romanian, Gutler and Badilla. But he said they decided not to match sounds. They said they were both going to play in their own style and just put the 2 things together. And when I was listening to it, it just used to make me smile, because just the sheer quality, and you could hear they're having a great time together. You could hear they were loving this. And they both had the technique. Ovidio played bass 1, Wolfgang Gutler played bass 2. And you can hear why Ovidio was just one of the greatest. Really, just musicality and just fantastic technique, and nothing was an issue in these. Yeah. What did you think, Susan?
Well, I've known both of their playing from afar and never heard them play together before. But my first thought, and this is kind of funny, they play so well together. And it's interesting that they told that a video told you that they were just going to play the way they played and not sort of, intentionally try to change what they were doing. I just thought there were 2 distinct voices that worked so well together. It was just perfect. I loved it. And I thought that their interpretation of the piece was super fun. And there was also just like a recording engineer thing that I noticed, is that they keep one bass in your left ear and one in your right ear if you're listening with headphones, or I have a new monitor that has really good speakers built into it. And so I was listening on that because it's really nice with the bass low end. And you could hear them a little more separately in a good way because of the way it was engineered. And I loved that because it doesn't get muddled together, which can happen. But I thought, God, there's so many tiny quotes from all of Bottesini's other pieces, concertos and duos and stuff in this piece. It's really, really fun. It's like, oh, I know that. And the articulations were super crisp and really nice, but, tasteful and totally classy and completely Bottesini appropriate, I think. And, it always makes me sad when there are people that are gone that I never got to meet, that are players that I really love, because I think I would have loved to have heard them live. And this is one of those recordings, as much as I love it, made me a tiny bit sad, because I thought I would love to be in the room hearing each of these players individually and together. Just, it's a different experience than hearing it on a recording.
The video was just as good live as he was on the CDs, on the recordings. He was a phenomenal player. And
that's such a talent.
Yeah, and we shared his last birthday together. We were all in Denmark.
Oh, nice.
And he knew his wines. We were really great friends. We spent every free moment with a video. There's me and Sarah, a video, Teppo Hautaho, and one of my students, Alex Forbes. And we just loved each other's company. And it was the video's birthday, and he knew his wines. And he went out and bought bottles of wine for everybody, all the teachers.
Oh, nice.
It was so nice. And I remember he just leant over to me, and he pointed. He said, "These are the ones for us. These are the best ones."
Oh.
So we got the best wines. So we got to drink the best wines with Ovidio Badilla. And my favorite photograph is of Ovidio and Teppo and me. It's 1:00 in the morning, and we're outside a kebab shop in Odense in Denmark. and
Hmm.
we'd had a few drinks, and you get to midnight, and I think one of us said, "Are you hungry?" So I am a bit. And somebody said, "I think there's a kebab shop open." So we walked down this kebab shop, and Alex, my student, took this photograph of the three of us. I've still got my jacket on from the evening concert, and we've all got a kebab in our hands. And I remember a video ate two kebabs while we ate one. He was, yeah, he loved life. He did everything. He didn't know anything by halves. A
Yeah,
video.
yeah.
He was amazing, really. But I love this one just because the thing I thought about is their playing makes these pieces sound like they're great pieces, which I don't think they are. I think they're good
Right.
pieces. I don't think they're great pieces.
Yep.
But they just sound almost great. I was really
Yeah.
quite impressed by this.
It takes wonderful playing to make that happen too.
Mm, yeah,
You know.
but it
Yeah.
was nice, and as I say, to spend so much time with a video was fantastic. When we
Yeah.
first met him in Michelstein, Kloster Michelstein in Germany,
Hmm.
and he was the great big soloist there. We were just sort of ordinary people, um, and I remember when he left, he got this big car, and the rest of us would just say bye, we're going now, and just wave, and he'd got all the lights flashing and the horn blaring, and he's waving out the window, and I remember Sarah saying, only a video would do that. He just couldn't leave quietly. It was so funny. And it's
That's
nice.
great.
It's the nice memories I have of him.
Yeah.
And it's nice that over the years, suddenly people have found videos of him performing, because we didn't
Yes.
think there were any.
Yeah, it's nice
Um,
because they're up there.
yeah, and it's nice. So these were my five recordings, which I really love. These are ones I would listen to more than once.
Yes. And I love them because there were five I didn't know. My
Good.
yeah, my solo recording collection is more extensive than I realized, but much smaller than yours. Um, and it's great because you know different recordings than I do, and these were treats. I just loved listening to them, preparing to talk about them with you. It was so much fun that I actually have saved. Some of these are on YouTube. You can find them,
Mm,
and I've actually bookmarked them so that I can come
fantastic.
back to them. Yeah, yeah,
But I
I
think I'm a
loved it.
fanatic. I think one of my directors of music, I once said I was passionate about this. He said, "Oh no, you're not passionate, obsessional." And I go, "That's probably right, actually." Yeah. So I've
That's good
collected
though.
recordings since I was about 16,
Yeah.
and now I'm 26. I've got quite a few, really.
You've done it quickly.
Exactly, exactly. So
Well,
I
we
hope you've
need.
enjoyed them, and I hope anyone listening um, enjoys them. And any
Yes.
problems, do contact me, and I can send you details of the recordings.
Yeah, I urge everyone that's listening to this, check these recordings out. I know we've put little bits in,
Hmm.
but listen to the full pieces and even the whole CDs, or if you find them on YouTube, see where they send you. Sometimes it'll
Mm.
send you down a little rabbit hole that can be very exciting. But take some time and enjoy listening to these pieces. I think everyone will really love them. And I want to thank you, David, because this was great. I love that you shared these recordings with me and with everyone else. It's such a treat to learn about new recordings I didn't know about. I have a lot to learn.
What I enjoyed was going back through my collection
Yeah.
and looking at the ones and just finding the ones that I really loved. And these five, I think, yeah, I can listen to more than once.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. They're fun. I listened to all of them more than once just in the past week. It's been great. And I want to thank everyone for listening to Bass Talk with Hagen and Hayes. Like and subscribe. And thank you to everybody. Stay well.